There are two ways to write quadratic equations. The first method is called standard form. Standard form looks like this. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. The second method that we have is something called vertex form. Now vertex form is a little different. We call it vertex form because we can look at vertex form and see exactly what our vertex is. Our vertex is made up of these two values, this h and this k. Okay? What we do for our vertex is we take this h value, and that's the x value of our vertex, and we take this k value, and that's the y value of our vertex. So these two numbers here are going to make up what we have in our vertex form. Now it's important to know that it's always a minus sign here. So depending on what your vertex is, it may change. It's going to look like the opposite in vertex form than what you have in your problem. Because if this were a minus h, let's say it was a minus 3, then up here we would have x minus negative 3, which would look like a plus. So that's going to be one thing that's a little different about the way vertex form looks. But the other part of vertex form is that it has this a value. Now this a value that we have right here, this a value and this a value is going to be the same. It doesn't matter whether it's standard form or vertex form. Whatever this coefficient is up here in our x squared term, it's going to be the same number when we have vertex form. And it's important to know this because in order to switch from standard form to vertex form, the first thing we do is find our vertex, and then we're going to plug that in to these two parts of our equation here. And then we also have to plug in a value for a, and we get that just by looking at our standard form equation. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so here's an example of an equation that's in standard form. And the first thing I want to do is find my vertex. Now the formula for finding our vertex is right here. The first thing we have to do is find the x value of the vertex, which we call our axis of symmetry. And we use the formula negative b over 2a. Now, let's figure out what a and b and c are in this equation so that we can use these values, a, b, and c, to plug them in. A refers to the coefficient that's in front of our x squared term. So a is going to be a value of 2. Remember, this a here is going to be the same as what we plug in down here for a, so it's really important to remember that value. Now our b is the coefficient that we have in front of our x term. So the b value we have here is 12. And the c value is the number that we have that's all by itself, which in this equation is also 12. So the first thing we have to do is find that axis of symmetry, and our formula, as I said, is x equals negative b over 2a. So let's substitute in. X equals negative b. Well, b is 12, so what I'm going to put in there is a negative b, which is negative 12, over 2 times a. A is 2, so 2 times 2. So if we simplify this, what we see is x equals negative 12 over 4, or our x value for our vertex is x equals negative 3. Okay? Now that's the x value of the vertex. What I need to do now is find the y value of my vertex. And the way I find the y value is I'm going to go back to this equation, and I'm going to plug everything in for x. That'll tell me what y equals, because y equals 2 times x squared. X was a negative 3. Okay, plus 12 times x, and again, x is negative 3, plus 12. So we'll just follow our order of operations and solve this problem. First thing I'm going to do is this exponent. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Okay, so let me rewrite the rest of this. And then my next step here is going to be to multiply. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 9 here, which is going to give me 18. And then I'm going to do 12 times negative 3, which is negative 36. And then nothing here, this plus 12. And then my last step is going to be to simplify all this together, which will give me y equals negative 6. So my vertex, if I think about this y value of negative 6, that x value of negative 3, that means my vertex is negative 3, negative 6. Now, remember, we said the vertex is really important because this is our h value and this is our k value when it comes to plugging into this equation, and we have our a value up over here. So my very last step is going to be to take this equation and plug all these values in. So y equals x minus h squared plus k. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to plug everything in. So I get y equals, my a value, come all the way back up here and look. A is 2, so I'm going to plug that in. And then I'm going to get, oops, wrong color, x minus, and my h value is right here, negative 3. Now x minus negative 3, the better way to write that isn't minus negative, it's just x plus 3 squared. And then I get plus k. Remember, this is our k value, so that's plus negative 6, which we'll just write as minus 6. So this is my vertex form. Y equals 2 times x plus 3 squared minus 6. Let's try one more. Again, start off. Axis of symmetry, we've got to find that x value of the vertex. Find A, which is negative 3. Find B, which is negative 6. Find C, which is 4. And now we're ready to plug into this equation. So we'll start off with x equals negative b over 2a, which when I plug in, x equals negative b, which is negative 6. So negative negative 6 is really a positive 6 times 2 times negative 3. That's my a value. If I simplify a little bit, I get x equals 6 over negative 6, which simplifies all the way down to x equals negative 1. Now that's the x value of my vertex. So let's find y now. Go back to your equation and plug in your value for x. So x is negative 1. So I'm going to get negative 3 times negative 1 squared minus 6 times negative 1 plus 4. And now let's simplify. Negative 1 squared right here is going to be negative 1 times negative 1, which is just 1. So I've got negative 3 times 1 minus 6 times negative 1 plus 4. So let's keep going. Multiply these out now. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Negative 6 times negative 1 is positive 6. Plus 4 is added on the end there. And when I simplify all this together, I get that y equals 7. So my vertex is negative 1, comma 7. Now going back to our equation, y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So it's time to plug everything in. Remember, the a value comes from up here, negative 3. So I'm going to get y equals negative 3. Then I've got my x minus h. This is my h, the x value of my vertex. So again, minus negative 1, but instead of minus negative 1, what we're going to do is do that as a plus 1 squared, and then plus k, and this is my k value here, which is 7. So my final equation is y equals negative 3 times x plus 1 squared plus 7.